The question of legitimacy of the United Nations, especially of the Security Council, will remain on the table until a way comes to include the voices of the rising regional powers and countries that are asserting themselves more. I'd like to say something about the General Assembly too. One of your speakers was absolutely right about the diminishment of the authority of the General Assembly vis-a-vis the Security Council, as the Security Council has taken on more issues. And that's absolutely the case.
I think Maria is trying to ask you a question. Maria, I believe you have a question from Mr. Quaterman.
Right, I do, but I have a question from my guests over here. I'd like to ask Maria, when Mr. Quaterman was talking about the Security Council, you were nodding your head in disagreement. I'd like to ask you what your stance is on that issue.
I think in that case what I was basically disagreeing on was the fact that when we talk about the expansion of Security Council, it will have to be a bit more representative, and it does not want to carry the same baggage it is carrying right now, that it is only representing the power of the select elite, the powerful club, because if that is what it is going to be, then it's basically going to be a bigger expansion of the same story. And if it is going to be truly representative, in which it basically underlines the principles of multilateralism, then perhaps we will have to see what is the point where we do actually agree that these regional powers have transformed into global powers, and if they have done so, what has been their track record in human rights, what have there been track records in various other commitments to international community. And I think in this case perhaps India and perhaps Brazil and other countries will fall far short of what is expected.
Right, Kokab, now over to you. I'd like to get Mr. Quaterman's response to that. Does he agree with what Maria just said?
Well, I think the question of qualification for permanent membership on the Security Council is valid. I mean, we haven't really talked about criteria. I know that these are countries that have identified themselves as being possible permanent members. There's even been some discussion, and Japan as well, and others. There's even been some discussion about a permanent membership that does not carry the veto with it. It will be up to a certain extent to each region to determine if the permanent membership is granted on a regional basis, to determine who should be the permanent member. I mean, one idea that's been put forward is a rotating permanent membership, a seat that would circulate among a certain number of member states. I mean, however it's done, I completely agree with Maria that there needs to be a greater representation of a wider variety of voices on the Security Council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Quaterman, and I would also like to thank Ambassador Akram, who joined us from New York, and also the guests in Islamabad and my co-host Maria, and to you, of course, for tuning in and watching the platform tonight. That's all the time we have here in Washington. I'd like to go back to Islamabad for Maria to wrap things up. Yes, Maria.
Thank you, Kokab. Now, Ambassador Mahmood, we're reaching the conclusion of this program, and when we began, prior to when the program started, you said the original question, the question that we should be asking is that, would the world be a better place today if the United Nations ceased to exist? I'd like to wrap up on that note.
Yes, I think that should be the criteria. Of course, United Nations has many weaknesses, drawbacks. It has not performed up to the expectations, and that has been primarily in the field of peace and security. But United Nations role also extends to non-security issues like economic development, social progress, environment, health, and what have you.
Right.
So if one sees there, that United Nations has performed quite well. It has laid down principles, rules, regulations, set targets.
Right.
Now it is up to the member states now to meet those targets and perform according to the expectations.
Ambassador Mahmood, we're out of time. I wish we had more time, but I'd like to wrap up things here in Islamabad on what Ambassador Mahmood said, that agreed that the United Nations does have its sets of imperfections, but yet it is what it is at the moment. We have to take it, but if we say that the world would probably be a better place without the United Nations, that would not be justified. On that note, I'd like to thank both my guests, Ambassador Khalid Mahmood and Dr. Maria Sultan. Pleasure to have you both here with us. Maria Zulfiqar Khan signing out for tonight.